Hello. I keep trying to do a live video, but every time I try and do it, it's showing upside down for some reason. So if anybody knows the correct way of doing a live video on Facebook, would you let me know, please? Because I don't know. Right, I'm going to talk to you about some equipment that you might need to start sewing. There are quite a few necessary things that you need. The first one is actually pins. I use a magnetic pin cushion because I just find it far better not to have pins all over the floor, because I have stood on one which required surgery to remove, so I find these better and they're all kept in one place. You will need, I like glass-headed pins best, only because they're easier to see, and fairly fine ones, and like your sewing machine needles, they do wear out after time, so don't just think you can buy one box of pins and keep it forever. You can't. They do go blunt, and as soon as they go blunt, throw them away responsibly. So pins and pin cushion. I also have a magnet somewhere for picking pins up off the floor. Another thing you need is an assortment of tape measures. Ordinary tape measures or tape measures like this. You need them for measuring yourself, measuring your fabric and so on. And to go with that, this is a jolly useful tool. You use it for measuring hems or anything else that you like. And to go with that, this has got tailor's chalk on one end, and if you want to extend a pattern or draw another line inside something, it's fantastic. I love that gadget. So you do need quite a lot of measuring tools, but there's lots of choice. These are useful for measuring seam allowances and small areas, as is this little gadget, which is actually so simple, but I love it. It has all the seam allowances and tiny things, and it's dead easy to use. I really like that. It melts though, so just be careful. If you're going to be using something in conjunction with an iron, then you need a metal measure, which is more or less the same, but I just like that little plastic one, just in case, because I have melted a few of those. Oh, that's another tape measure. That's a nicer Liberty one. Right. If you don't want to use pins on some fabrics that might mark, then you can get these paperweights, which just hold your fabric down and you don't need to pin it. Things like faux leather or some satins and silks mark easily, so you don't want to use those. What else have I got? Marking pens. You can get tailor's chalk in a pencil, which is fine. You can get tailor's chalk in little blocks or little triangular sort of shapes. These are my favourite marking tools. This also has got tailor's chalk in, because it wipes off pretty easily. If you use these things like trick markers and marker pens, if you accidentally go over them with an iron before you remove them, they will become permanent and they can spoil your fabric. So, for example, if you're making something that's pretty sheer, then it would show through to the right side, and they don't always disappear completely. Sometimes they come back when you wash your garment. So I only ever use these on very thick fabrics, like quilting cottons, and where they definitely won't show through to the right side. So do be careful. I like to stick to tailor's chalk. There's another form you can get tailor's chalk into, and that's powdered chalk. These are nice. These are nice to use. But good old tailor's chalk is cheap and cheerful and does the job. Now we'll come on to scissors. You need fabric cutting out scissors. I've got two sizes of these, very sharp. They're by Fiskars. I like Fiskars scissors. That's a pair of long shears for cutting out large articles, and a similar pair shorter. You will need a pair of scissors for cutting out your paper pattern. Please never ever ever use your dressmaking shears on anything other than your fabric. Even tissue paper will blunt them. It's just not worth it. They are protected almost under law, so don't let anybody else use them for anything. You need these. You will need various pairs of scissors for cutting little threads and snipping seam allowances and that. This curved pair is quite useful, and that's quite a nice pointed pair for cutting buttonholes. Again, these are Fiskars. I like Fiskars scissors. And you might need a little thread snipper. I can get the cover off. They're quite useful, but I'd just sooner have a pair of scissors, in all honesty. But they're good when you just want to snip the ends of threads. These duckbill scissors are really unusual. When you're cutting something out, they protect the piece of fabric on the other side. So if you're trimming one side of a seam allowance, for example, or in quilting, they are fantastic. You don't need these unless you're going to be doing a lot of quilting, or you come into situations where you will need them. But just be aware that the duckbill scissors are available, and if you want to know more about them, just ask me. They're one of my favourite tools. You will definitely need beeswax or some other form of wax for your thread. To wax your thread, it really strengthens it, and you get a bobbin of thread and you run it through, and it makes it strong. But don't just leave it at that. Get your iron on it, because an iron will actually seal the wax into the thread. It'll make it super, super strong for sewing buttons on, hems, anything where you need a good strong thread. Use that and iron it on. You need ordinary sewing needles. This is jolly useful. When you do a corner of a collar or a corner of a bag, that will just push the corner out square. So a point turner, dead simple. And you will definitely need some sort of stitch unpick to undo anything stitches. Not necessarily mistakes. It could be tacking that you want to undo. So these are some of my tools. Oh, you also need a ruler. I've got various lengths of rulers. So scissors, yeah. Some way to mark your fabrics. Tailor's chalk is best. Point turner. Some sort of seam measure. I would get a long one for hems and so on, and I would get one that does just seams as well. They're really quite cheap. Tape measure. Now we'll come on to thread. I like Gutermann thread, as you can see, and it's because it's a very, very high quality thread. And if you use a cheaper threads such as moon threads that you can buy a huge roll for 99p or so, are fine in your overlocker. They won't cause any damage, but they're made up, the cheaper threads are made up of very short fibres of fabric that are left over. Sorry, I didn't mean to say fabric, I meant to say threads. And they're all very linty, they will clog up your machine. So don't be tempted, always buy a really good quality sewing thread. I've got loads, and they're all Gutermann. They are a good thread. As I say, for your overlocker machine, you can use a cheaper thread, but it's just not worth it for your sewing machine, because it can cause problems. And that's it, I think. Another time we'll talk about patterns. Sewing patterns, if you want to go ahead and buy a pattern, they are not sized the same as commercial sizes, and that this is for you as well, John. It applies to men. The sizing that you see are all on the back. So how you would choose your size is you don't go by your commercial dress or shirt size. You use the measurements on here. So you would measure, if you were making a dress or a blouse, you would measure your bust at the fullest point. John, you would measure your chest if you're making a shirt. If you're making trousers, you'd want your hips and your waist measurements, and you choose the nearest size. So if your normal dress size in the shop is a 10, don't be surprised if on some patterns you need a 14 or a 16 pattern. That is perfectly normal. Clothes in the shops are vanity sized, but patterns haven't been vanity sized. They are still the original sizes, so don't be alarmed. There is nothing nicer than a well-fitting garment. And if, well, I've seen lots of people do it. They buy a pattern, they think, oh, I'm a size 10. They cut out a size 10, it's too small. They never go back to sewing again. So take your measurements. It may well be you're the same pattern size as your dress size, but always take your measurements and always keep trying on. So that's a little introduction to some of the tools that I use, as well as my sewing machine. We'll talk about pressing tools another time, because there are various things that you'll need there as well. So thank you for watching. Bye bye.